one of the top 40 records being played on every radio station in the United States is a communication to the children to take a trip, to cop out, to groove. The psychedelic jackets on the record albums have their own hidden messages.
Special question. We don't want you to smoke genetically modified ganja. We want you to smoke the real thing. We want you to smoke the natural herb. Some call it marijuana, some call it sensibilia, some call it lamb's bread, and some people call it ganja.
Welcome to another edition of the Adam Dunn Show. I'm your host, Adam Dunn. And in the studio, back again, JJ.
Hey now.
Fresh from the East Coast. Was it fun out there? It was fun, right?
The big Boston trip.
Mm-hmm. Shane's still there, right?
Yeah, they were. They stayed a few days.
Shane's still there.
I think he's got some family out there.
He does. It helps. It's one of those towns, if you don't have family there, you're pretty much in and out quickly.
Oh, yeah.
It's fucking expensive.
The price of hotels were just crazy.
Well, yeah, we went there on a New York Yankee Boston Red Sox weekend, so that was not the greatest timing-wise as far as getting a hotel, because we had to stay, like me and James were like 20 miles out. Everybody's like, yeah, Braintree, what are you, crazy? I was like, well, there was no other choice. We didn't have much of a choice.
Yeah, I was downtown right around the corner. We just walked to the event, but it was quite expensive.
And then a little bit later, we were hoping Duke Diamond's going to call in. He was supposed to be in the studio. We didn't have any idea. Usually helps when you tell the guy who's going to be on the show that he's going to be on the show. And that usually helps. But apparently none of that information made it to him, so we don't have Duke in the studio. And then also Mephisto was supposed to be here, right, Ryan?
Yeah.
But I guess didn't happen.
I'm going to see if I could get Money Mike to call in.
Good old Money Mike again. Getting back. It's like a repeat. I mean, we're going for the repeat, but a little less craziness. Now, the last show, if you guys weren't watching, where we had JJ on, it was about 2 weeks ago, was it 3 weeks ago? Yeah, it was 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 3 weeks ago. And it created quite the energy, I would say. I don't know. Yeah, so Tu and Mr. Soul went at it a little bit on the show with their own philosophies on feminized strains. And, you know, one of the things was, I think the main point was the main point that Tu was trying to make was the fact that, you know, we have, within the experience that we've had with feminized across the board, there's been chances of things popping up, either male or obviously Hermie. And Mr. Soul was having none of it because of science. And I mean, there's one thing we do know when it comes to cannabis is, you know, the fact that none of us are real scientists. We're all just, you know, hobbyists, let's say. And the real scientists are the guys who have no experience in the field.
Right,
So you got this.
You got to mesh the two.
Yeah, and you don't really want. I mean, I think it's actually the reason why things are actually interesting and fun still is because of that. Like the minute it's literal and it's been 100% documented and there's no more fun, which, you know, we're all chasing these little rainbows and hoping that we find some new thing. But once you get enough money behind it and they're really looking for results and they want to, you know, then yeah, they'll get to the bottom of those things, and that kind of sucks.
Right.
You know?
It kind of goes with anything, with any kind of book discipline, you know. When you read it, you know what I mean, and then you try to apply it to the field, you know, you just come up with different applications that you just didn't expect.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and you know what the subject was pretty simple. It was, you know, is there really a true female that and is his princess a true female? And I was like, well, knowing that I worked at Sensi Seeds exactly, I remember that crop. You know, I remember that they were selling seeded weed because I actually quit working for them about a year earlier, so I had my own spot. But I remember swinging by at Sensi Smile, and I'm like, wait a minute, you guys have more seeds in a $20 euro bag of weed, or a 20 guilder bag even at the time, than you would of a 50 guilder pack of seeds. So like, you guys are killing your own market there, and they didn't seem to mind. I remember it was like Jack. It was the new Jack thing that they had just pretty much launched, you know. So I'm sure there was some great genetics in there, 100%. But to imagine that, the one of the one of the one is 100% stable, it's kind of...
Right, but to begin with, do you think that came from a Hermie or pollinated that got...
Well, the thing is, okay, the good part is it's from Sensi seeds, so you can hope that it was a mistake with normal males, because when they used to grow, I used to go out to their greenhouses, and it was like they grew with positive pressure Sensi in the middle of seeded stuff, you know what I mean? So like they'd have seeded greenhouses, and then right down the middle, just positive pressure, and just grow all Sensi in there, and they were like, yeah, no problems, we have no problems. So, but you know what I mean, like, no problems means like everything, smooth, you get one or two hiccups, fans go down, no positive pressure, guys walking around, who knows what went down. But it was, it was also interesting too, because another friend of mine always would bring that one subject up. He's like, you do know that the Cindy 99 is made from bag seed from Sensi, and I didn't even really know the story until I was later. I was like, wait a minute, you're talking about the time? And he's like, yeah, I was there. I bought the same stuff. You know what I mean? Like, it was like literally, it was a very memorable, because most shops you get 1, 2 seeds maybe. You know what I mean? This was like, there was like, you do have a seed shop 2 doors down. You may want to address the situation, but that's how good things come out. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, that's how we got that, which is pretty cool.
But to me, it just seemed like a general concept that all living things kind of hermaphrodite, even humans, there's male and female tendencies, in gay people.
I always looked at it like kind of like a spectrum, and you were like on one end of the spectrum or the other. That's, in my sort of way of looking at it was, you have your alpha males and your alpha females, not talking about you, Ethos. Those are my alpha. Wait, no. But in my opinion, it was like, you had the extremes, which are the ones that are like, okay, that's as much of that as you're going to get. You know what I mean? And then you had all the in betweens. Some feminine with masculine tendencies, some masculine with feminine tendencies, and you see that. You know what I mean? You can see it.
Right.
Just by opening your eyes and looking at people, you're like, okay, everybody's not the same. And so weirdly enough, that was what pushed Mr. Soul over the edge too, you noticed, was that one study which had nothing to do with plants. I was like, So I was like, this is about people again. So it was kind of interesting that the one thing that kind of opened, made him understand. But I think it doesn't take much to kind of figure out that we're as mixed up as a race as the cannabis plants are. You know what I mean? Like if you think about back in 500 years ago when there was less traveling.
But it's a very adaptable plant, so I think that it can turn on and off these certain.
Of course, yeah, but the other crazy part though is because we're working with polyhybrids that are crossed with other polyhybrids. We're not talking about just 2 things that are different. We're talking about things that are interrelated and different, making the combinations even more erratic. And so, if you take Jack for example, Jack Herrera was an 11-way hybrid made, made 11-way hybrid. So took that family tree and then exploded again and look at the 11 inputs. They weren't all land races. They were like super skunks, different hazes. And so there's so much recessive genes just floating around. The idea that we can never, we ever be able to pinpoint them all. I mean, and that's again, I think, where I don't want it to happen. I'm like, don't pinpoint them all, because if we pinpoint them all, then we're really bored. You know what I mean? Then we're like, because people will then look at, because that's one thing when people take 1,000 plants and take a sample of each of them and don't even grow those plants out, because they don't like what they see. This one's got this, and so we start to get real, like, we're going to miss out on some stuff, because the discoveries were, by mistake a lot of times. You're growing a bunch. What the hell is that? You know what I mean? There's always that one freak in the batch, and that's kind of like what I think pushes the whole industry forward is that, selection of freaks and looking for stuff that's stepping outside of the norm.
Well, that's the beauty in seeds. You know, every seed is different, and just like you said, you could have, you know, a whole room of things, and then there's just that one thing that just kind of stands out like a star that just catches your eye every time you walk in, and you're just like, what is this one?
Yeah, and
and that's your 1 in 100 seed. Sometimes, you know, you get those 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000, whatever you want to call it. You know, it's a diamond in the rough.
Yeah, the you know, the chances of finding stuff in those crazy polyhybrids because that's the funny thing is that people are really happy with what they see a lot of times now, and they don't really care about what the full effect of the whole plant is. They're like, oh yeah, it looks good, good structure, or you know, good resin count on it maybe. But the whole thing is to run the entire cycle, and because if you put all your eggs in, there's a million times where you go like, okay, oh that's the one, oh yeah, look at that, that's the queen right there, you know, and then you're not looking at this one over here. And you're putting all your attention on that, and in the end, it just said,
sometimes you get a late bloomer in there, and something that just sneaks up on you, and just like you said, it kind of, you know, you got your eye on one thing, and before you know it, you know, the smells start coming out, you know, and
well, it's also like the difference between a fresh plant and a harvested plant is that's where like the weird stuff happens as far as like you can't control sometimes where. You can control your atmosphere and you can control your speed of your drying and all that, but sometimes you just get like nothing. You know what I mean? Like the flavors just don't last. And you get other ones that
sometimes
powers through.
Sometimes you smell something when it's flowering and it just doesn't come through in the dried product.
Yeah, it's always that way.
You know?
It's very rarely. Occasionally you'll get the ones where you're not impressed with it on the plant, and then it dries and it kind of comes up a notch or two. And those are usually really good. In my opinion, always the other way around though. It's almost it's like 95% of the time. It's like, whoa, this smells so good and different, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, hold on a second. Oh, we got Astro from UB40 is trying to call me. So should I answer it? Hold on. Yo. Hey Astro, how you doing? I'm doing my show right now, actually. I got a podcast. Here, wait one second. Let me see if I can get you to say hi to the Adam Dunn Show.
Hey. Listen, we're trying tonight. Let me to begin. What are you up to? What are you doing?
Well, let me call you back in about. Can I call you back in like 2 hours? Because I'm just going to finish my show, and then I'll see what I can do. Where are you staying at? Okay, I'll give you a call right when I'm done, and I'll swing by. Okay. Okay, talk to you soon. Peace. I don't think you believed we were on the show. Good friends of ours from UB40. Astro always took care of him in Amsterdam, so it was always like and then Doug always takes care of him with clothes now and some bud and stuff. And
there's always a go-to
They
guy.
smoked more weed than any band. Like if you get like a crew and you get used to them, they come to town and know what they want. But when they came to town, it was on. You know what I mean? Because they would travel. They were like the Dead in a way where they would travel with their whole family. They had their kids, their wives. Everybody smoked weed, and they were like, okay, so, it was never like an ounce or something. It was always like, we need like a couple pounds. And I was just like, damn. So, no, UB40 is a proper smoking crew, that's for sure. And then I just realized they were playing tonight, so I put the word out. I was like, oh, damn. So, where we're at, where the hell were we when we got called? Where the hell were we at? Where were we at? MTI, you're in charge, man. You're the guy in charge. Sounds good.
We were talking about
selecting and the smell loss.
Well,
I think it's more great here.
The Mr. Soul, the controversy between him and two, and then it started here, but then it spilled over onto a big Facebook fight.
Oh my God! It turned into it was like over 500.
It was
600
crazy.
Comments, 600 comments on there. It was crazy. But a good part about it is it went full circle where everybody, and I had people getting all pissed off at me because I defended two in a sense. All I did was say, hey, look at the reality of what's happened. This guy said he would never do feminized a few months ago. Then he did, and now he's an expert. And we're all trying to say, hey, you may want to adjust your level of ability. Like 2%, maybe 1%, 0.5%. Something has to be taken into account, because it can't work in these 100% worlds. It doesn't.
Right. No.
I mean, it makes sense on paper, yes, but it's just impossible to apply, because then all of a sudden you're like.
Well, especially when you got someone telling you, that they found something to the total opposite to what you're saying. 2 says those guys have found a male out of feminized seeds, and now they're using it for breeding.
Right. And and the thing is, I know that I've grown so-called femmed things and had males pop up. I've had guys try to make femmed, give them to me, and I got all males, so they completely screwed it up. You know what I mean? So it's not, it's definitely one of those things where it's applying is important, and but no, like I said, we're all glad that it turned into an actual discussion.
At least he was man enough to admit that he was wrong.
Yeah.
And
no, it turned into a real discussion that actually got full circle, and people got hurt along the way, but it all came around. It was like a big kumbaya moment, I think, at the end even. But then it kind of kept going back. Then there was at least 2 or 3 other threads that were like 90, 110 comments, something like that were other side ones that developed off of it too. So I think altogether we were looking at close to 1,000 comments.
You get people trying.
It was heated, heated.
Yeah, well,
it's officially heated at that point.
Well, you get a lot of people that are chiming in that really know nothing about it, but they want to support Mr. Soul, and then they start arguing with somebody else. So all these side fights, like you say, start to erupt. And it starts to get personal in some instances, and it's just, it's just not really, it's not really called for. So.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. My phone is blowing up now. Now it's turned into one of those like, Jesus, can't keep up. Yeah, no, and like I said, it's good to see the people kind of, it's one of those things where I think feminized LEDs, there's certain things that get to people. They're their heartstrings, So if you get a bunch of guys in that actually make LEDs and tell them the LEDs suck, which is pretty easy to do because everybody who grows with them is kind of like 50-50 on, whether it's the, but if you're making them, of course, it's a different story than if you're buying them, because if you're buying them, you're spending like $2,000 to replace a $400 light. You know what I mean? Right. So from the money side, it never makes sense. But it is interesting to see that certain little things in this industry are so sensitive.
Well, there's so many different ways to do things. So people get set in their own ways, and
Well, yeah, if it works, and that's the other thing about cannabis too. I think along the way, the people who made the most impact in the sense of were the most consistent. You know what I mean? It was almost like if you were consistent, and you could keep a level, even if it was like an 8 or whatever, but as long as you could keep that level going forever, right, then it was more of a value than if you could just hit it, bing, once in a while you got a good one, and most of it's crap, and occasionally, but that's why when people got real simple, like, I only grow one thing, and that's the hard part is breeding. You're trying to like keep everything rolling, but you're also not able to just hone in on just one plant, And,
no.
Do you find that's a little bit difficult, or a little bit?
Yeah, it is. Especially when you got 10 or 20 different strains.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But usually when I'm breeding, I have an end result in mind on what I want, what I'm working on, and I'll just hit up the rest of the clones that are in the room
mm-hmm.
with that male. But I would be working, towards a Chem back cross, just say, and then, I'll have, different variety of clones that I'll just pollinate.
And what
in the process.
Are you doing? So you're doing like how many different males normally at one time? You're from the school of like trying to hit it from every side, or are you kind of more
Well, usually,
figure out what you like and
yeah,
work on
usually when I, like right now, I'm doing a whole seed run of some New York City Chem 2.0s, and so out of all the seeds, I'll sex them. The females will stay in, but I'll hone in on one male usually. Usually I try to just go with one male, and it's either a make or break situation. If if you're experienced in knowing what to look for, usually it usually works out. Unless you pick something that's totally,
Well, yeah, I mean, if you can definitely go down the. I always kind of figure it like as you're going down these paths and you think you're doing great, and all of a sudden you just dead end at a certain spot. And
Right.
like that definitely with more projects than not. I mean, it kind of seems like that's where it's like you do too much work on it. I mean, you're almost better off to stop earlier.
Right.
Kind of figure out.
Well,
the
it
stop.
depends on what you're looking for. Once you find that end result, then you can just stop, like you said. You find a male and a female, and you just have them mothered, and then you're just continuing the breeding to make seeds.
Do you find that there's a little degradation though with like certain plants that especially the males, because you're just holding them back so much, you know what I mean, compared to like do you ever have like I've noticed with a lot of males, especially with new stuff that I get from people that are new, none of them really want to just chill. They always want to bolt, flower, their show sex when they're under 24 hours of light, you know what I mean?
Right.
Seems to be that it's harder to find plants that are kind of resistant to just kind of wanting to, especially with the males. That's what I've noticed. I mean,
Well, the thing is, after a while, they just want to, like you said, they kind of want to go. And once they start getting root bound and stuff like that, they just kind of trigger.
I mean, I have them with the certain ones that'll be, I mean, and usually they just get eliminated at a certain point, but sometimes you get them where you'll take a cut off of a plant that's got a few flowers because it just doesn't really want to never stop that way, and then the cuts will do the same thing,
Right,
as a young, tender,
No, I've had that happen. Usually, you don't try to keep a male mother for too long. I'll just take a clone off of that and start a new mother. But I'll keep that same male, but just start going from clone to clone. And it depends on how long I want to use it for. I mean, if I want to continue the breeding, I'm just going to use that male once anyway, and then I'll pop them seeds, find another male, and continue the process.
I mean, I feel like that's the kind of bottleneck too, is the being able to go through your stock and run enough of them to then sort of hone in on stuff. That seems to be where it's because of. I mean, it's either a situation of you have to be in the right situation where you're going to use all your material for either hash or something, and it's in the stream, and everyone's going to get paid, and because otherwise, if you're doing it by yourself, it turns into like it's a very hard to. That real estate is usually pretty valuable, you know what I mean? So then all of a sudden you're like, am I going to run 200 of mine to only pick out the one or two, you know what I mean? And then if you're not able to kind of keep everything rolling, so especially if you're like independent, small guy, doing your own thing. I mean, nowadays hash makes it doable, but then you also got to either have that skill or bring in that person, lose that, kind of. Right. You know the formula. I'm sure you know the formula and how it works, how it does or it doesn't work. But you have a lot. But we were talking about it on the last show. You guys got a lot of crews out there testing your stuff, and a lot of different. Because for me, that's the best. Is if it's in, somebody in Washington State, somebody in Florida, somebody like different environments, and then you get results back from everybody, right. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. Now we actually have something of a real
consistency.
Overview.
Yeah, well, we got a lot of people in New York that,
I would think so.
If we come up with something new, we'll have them run it, and then we'll put it into the stream of product that goes out in New York, and then we'll see what kind of reaction we get.
Mm-hmm. So we talked about last time some of the projects you were working on. That was you're doing the I-95 also, some stuff with that.
Money Mike is doing that right now, but I am working with I-95 Chem D mail right now. And actually that's flowering right now. And it's going to probably be throwing some pollen within a week or so.
Nice. So it seems to be that's the hot ticket right now.
Right.
But also interesting about that, every time I smoke it, I'm like, okay, well, at least it's not just like overpoweringly just OG. It's got its own unique.
It's a nice blend, actually.
It's got a
and certain phenos lean different ways.
A little more woodsy, maybe a little more kind of like spicy woodsy in a sense. That's what I noticed on a few that were from I think what 2 was doing. It was nice, but it had like the more kind of like a very a good lingering kind of thing about it. You know what I mean? It's not as much in your nose and up in your sinuses, but more like back your throat.
Right. No, it's a very thick kind of a smoke that, once it coats your mouth, it
kind of like good hash plant in the 90s always was, and you kind of like always had that. Good Hawaiian had that if it was the right particular one, and bubblegum in the beginning. That was the reason that people liked it was like kind of like disgustingly coat your mouth to the point where you're just like, ugh.
Right. But after you blow the smoke out and that taste kind of lingers and you're kind of like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? You're still trying to taste it, and
that's why I guess everyone was blessed with Chem for the longest time with that. I mean, it always had that. That's really what it is. Like, if you wanna, it's kind of like with beer too. The same thing. Like, you drink normal crappy beer, you just kind of drink it. But if you have like a good craft beer that's got that right mosaic hops or something that you really like, and then you just swirl it around and you got this whole thing going on. And it's the same, with wine, and the same with cannabis too. So like if you get cannabis that tastes really good, I mean, you can have stuff that's strong but has no flavor, and you don't really, because you don't get that moment where you really want it, keep it in your mouth and swirl it around and all that. But if you have good, really good tasting weed, then it's just an automatic reflex or something. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, gotta savor that little bit.
Yeah, those OGs kind of have that effect. They just blow out the smoke and just has that lemon.
Oh yeah. No, there's always, but there's so many variables now, and it used to be pretty straightforward. And it's like, okay, that's the OG or bottled flavor, boom, and then it got, in a sense, better maybe from a consumer point of view. There's other flavors that are out there, but it's all kind of, it all falls back to a certain center line.
Right.
And so I mean, it's it's crazy how people have what speaking of crazy, what's his name? Fucking Joe Petrie at the show had listed. Did you see how he had like OGs listed as land races?
Yeah.
That was just like,
no.
What are you doing, dude? Like, come on. Like, hilarious.
No.
And he had green crack. He had green crack as a land race.
No, that's someone that's really trying to, get the uneducated consumer. And a lot of his stuff was like $150, $200 a pack. So it's like when you buy something for that much money, you kind of expect results.
Yeah, and I mean, not like we're going to give that guy any time on the show, but as far as, miscommunication to people. And the crazy part is like everything that he's doing is a miscommunication, and then that's all he's out there accusing other people of doing. You know what I mean? And you're like, yeah. And he tried to scrap with Danny. That was big news. That was some big news from Boston. Danny took a slight slap to the face, but he just... what did he do? He threw a book at. He threw the book at him.
Dano. Book him, Dano.
Book him, Danko. Yeah, he basically threw Joe's book back at him, where he was showing him the part where he basically just lied, because he was talking about how he was basically saying how Danny felt in the book. like, Danny felt a pit in his stomach. You know, and Danny's like, well, first of all, how the fuck are you in my head? Like, you know what I mean? Writing for me.
But it had something to do with ratting people out, or I'm not really sure what the real story on that was.
I mean, the reality is
I never for someone that claims to be the second oldest grower on the world or something, that I overhear him telling someone, like, I've never heard of the guy until the last year or so. He kind of popped up, I think, at the Emerald Cup. I think the one
I've heard of him since the 90s, but it's just because he's one of those, he's literally the guy who accused everybody. He accused me of being a cop working in Holland for deep cover for 20 years, I guess, there. And then...
Was he involved in the scene over there at all, or...?
No, but his whole thing was, Reinhardt was his partner, and Reinhardt's the guy who basically made the XL 420, which was the first original, before the Pollinator, before the Mila came out with her bubble bag, or her bags, and before Mark came out with his bubble bags and all that stuff. They had the patent where it was showing like water, screen, hash, my patent, you know what I mean? Which is, then that's why they sued everybody, and they actually, I think they won their case against bubble bags. So, and I don't know if Neil ever even went to court against it, but guy's basically that kind of a person. He always wants to sue, and he always wanted the claiming, and basically Reinhardt's real smart. So he's the guy that basically came to Amsterdam in the 90s, said like, hey, look, this is bubble hash, and then he like walked away and never didn't keep rolling with it. Then Mila was like, okay, well, let's make these bags, because, you know, she was sitting in a circle with a bunch of people, and they were all just like, you don't need all that, you just need this. And then it was like, oh, bing, and, you know, the Mark Rose was sitting. The funny thing is, we had Mark on the show, so Mark Rose was literally the guy on the couch, you know, fucking Fridays or whatever, like this, like the dude, like he literally was the guy laying on the couch listening to what they're saying, and he's like, I think I can do that. And he like ran out and had them made and came back before they even like left the table type thing. You know, they actually left the table, but it was still sitting in the same place, still talking, and he was like, boom, here you go, and made the first bubble bag, you know, or isolator bag, sorry, first one. And then, you know, ended up making the bubble bags for Bubble Man. Conspiracy. So it was just one of those things.
That's all it takes is an idea.
Yeah, but it was one of those deals where it was like, guy on the couch is like, oh yeah, I can do that, and like, whoosh, you know, he went out and did it before anybody else could even think about it.
Well, welcome to the world of cannabis.
Yeah, and the good part about it, though, is like, you know, that's how. I mean, how many people got into making bubble hash, and then how many people figured out that it's a fucking lot of work, and then they kind of eased off a little bit, and then it became like, there's one guy in every crew that's what he does. You know what I mean? He's usually got dreadlocks. And that's the guy. You're like, hey, you got dreads. You're making the hash. Okay, so yeah, all right. But it was like, and the reality though is it's more art, and it's more of an art than blowing cans and doing all that kind of shit and making closed loop system and spending a lot of money. Just because it's like more like cooking, you know what I mean? So it's like as much of an art as cooking is an art. So it can either be a job, you can go and just cut things all day long and just put half your heart into it, or you can be really into it, and everybody who tries it goes, oh my God, this is amazing. And that's why I always liked when people...
The Frenchy cannoli. You know?
Yeah, sure. Like he is a good example. I mean, he doesn't even separate as much as other people do, and he does more old school style as far as his ways of curing it and pressing it and all that. But still, he has a pretty tried and true system, just because of the fact that he's clean and he takes his time. You know, and you can tell just by looking at the guy that he's like very compartmentalized and got everything working like that, which kind of separates people. You know, and same with growers. It's just like everybody has their own style, but it's usually like people who just inherently are like a little more organized and clean and stuff that actually pull it off. You know what I mean? You go and you're like, ooh. So, I mean, you're pretty much your whole time back east, you're a one-man kind of crew, right? You didn't really.
Well, for growing, you know, I mean, we had a crew for around us, you know,
yeah,
but
trimming.
No, all that was pretty much myself, you know. it was a one-man crew, the operation. But we had a crew of people that everyone was independent, but we all kind of looked out for each other. If someone wanted to go away on vacation, that someone can come over your house and water your garden. You didn't have to worry about it. They taught me pretty much, a lot that I know about growing in the beginning. They had been growing for like 10 years plus. So when I started up, I hit the ground running, luckily. And, in a year or two after I started, fucking around with the growing, that's when I, started about, starting to make seeds for myself. Because we would just get these clone-only strains, and, we had no males. So, once I figured out I wanted to, make a male, I wanted to at least preserve some of these clone-only cuttings, because a lot of times they slipped through our hands and then we never got them back, and the thing just disappeared forever. So I always figured, listen, if I can get something that's 75-80% of what it was originally, it's going to be a home run. So I just really started doing it for my own self-preservation.
Okay, speaking of slip through the fingers, and something that you and I personally, I never actually figured out, because I was like, I'm a little confused. But with the whole Underdog story, the original one that you guys selected, so because at one point I had the Corey Haim cut, the Guava Chem, and I thought I had an Underdog. So
right. I think AJ misled you on that one, and that was the Corey Haim. That was the original Corey Haim that he gave you, labeled as Underdog. And I think he wanted to see what you were going to do with it, and that name would just follow it. But the original Underdog was done by the Weasel, and I believe it was a Northern Lights Super Skunk male. I could be wrong. He's changed the story.
Northern Light times Super Skunk, or either one of those.
Well, originally he went up to Massachusetts. He had met Chem Dawg Greg, and he went up there to trade clones. He brought his clones up there. He came back with the Mass Super Skunk in the '91. And then I believe he went over to Amsterdam and got some NL seeds. And he brought the Northern Light seeds back, and he found a male. And then he crossed that to the Super Skunk. And then he took a male of that and crossed it into the '91 Chem. It was some kind of combination thereof. I definitely know he said it might have been Northern Lights '91 times Super Skunk, or once you start going back that far, it's kind of hard to remember. But I do know that they did 100 seeds, and out of that 100 seeds, it was the number one. And even he said it. He told me from the beginning. He goes, "This is going to be the winning seed, number one."
And it turned out to be the one.
And that turned out to be the one.
See, they could have saved all. They could have saved the other 99. That's the way it goes, too, right? I mean, it's like.
Right.
Whenever you do something, you're a lot of times it is like that, as one of the first ones out of the gate, or one of the first ones that you really focused on. Because we had the Weasel on the show a long time ago. I'm sure we kind of covered it even back then. But then more recently, because the problem was that I had that even in Amsterdam, right? So that's how long ago that I was given those things. It was like 9 years ago, right? So it was like a point where I was like. So I'd already had it there, left it there. He went to Spain, So this is like the classic example of a mislabeled thing that gets put out there, and then Doug ended up giving it having it worked out with Julian over there, was doing our latest stuff, and so Julian, got all excited, put it in that, crossed it out, put it out, and then right away I said to Doug, like, Doug, should have talked to me about that, you know what I mean? Because this is because literally I was only finding out, that's like when I found out. So Doug had already done all the, printed up all this stuff and went for it. And I was like, well, first of all, it's not actually that, so that kind of sucks. But on top of that, it would, if you had asked me, I would have then said, yeah, you do know my friend's company, that's his sort of trademark thing. So I know that there was definitely, and the thing is I'm here, and they're doing stuff in Spain. So for me, it's like always like I find out sometimes as much as I'd be like, really, I didn't even know that. Like the Chico was one the same recently, and this stuff that I started the work on, and then left with them, and then they did the selection from that point. But are you? Is there? I mean, besides me stepping on your toes, is there anybody else who's actually, without unbeknownst to them, sort of jumped on this whole? Because that was a big confusion on the Chem Dawg story from the beginning, even from my side, was it was only known by you and him and a few small few people around who was spelling it in what way, and it was got a lot of people would think that it was originally DAWG, but then we got it clarified by Greg that it was definitely not that, and then it made sense that it was more yours, which I separated the two would-be brands, because you guys didn't even know you'd be brands at that time, and it was just kind of signatures, I guess.
Right.
Have you had a bunch of, because that's going to be the next, that's the whole thing about this industry in general. It's like, that's like actually its own TM in itself, which I would do if I were you.
Yeah, no, there's been a lot of people, jumping on that bandwagon. There's really not much you can do about it, you know what I mean, other than try to call them out morally.
Yeah, or verify, because you never know if it's real or not. That's the.
But I don't mind companies, going out and using them in outcrossing or doing something like that. But when you try to F to it or do some other kind of related Chem Dawg cross, it's it's pretty much a no-brainer in my opinion. You know, and that's what a lot of people have done.
Well, it's like.
In a way, it's a compliment, but no one else has kind of worked the chem line to get a male like I have. So it's
Well, yeah, and it's also when you get like two things that actually work together because they've been worked for so long. Yeah, and then all of a sudden it's like, wow, these work really good together. It's like, yeah, no kidding. And it doesn't really even matter if they're doing it on their own and whatever. But the minute that they want to market it, and then it's kind of like a double edge, because if they tell what it is, if they don't tell what it is, they can do that anyway, right? You have chances of you running around and like checking everybody's thing. Genetics cost you a bunch of money and a waste of time in a sense. But at the same time, if they do use the name and then they don't pay you for it, it kind of sucks too, because it's like, okay, so now you're just basically every time I put money into advertising, I'm paying for you guys, So it does go the other way. Yes, you get a little bit of free boost, let's say, but it doesn't really make. I mean, it
doesn't pay your bills at the end of the day.
No, and I've been a victim of that as a company for 20 plus years, going on 25 years now. So it's like, yeah, it sucks. Like
you get the recognition that you get the fame, but
you
no
get
fortune.
And you also get the problem that you don't know if it's yours or not, because there's a lot of that. Like, with me, it was the biggest problem was, like, for instance, probably the most famous strain, bubblegum, got kind of, I would say, hijacked by Simon, because,
weren't there two bubblegums?
Well, no, I gave, see, this is one of those great stories where it got so confused and from so many different sides that I kind of sat back and went, like, what the fuck is everybody even thinking right now? The bubblegum that I had was this, okay, so basically when I grew them from seed, I labeled them 1 through 7. And then number 3 was and I did it by size, so 1 small, 7 big. And the number 3, which kind of was lucky in the sense because it was in the middle, was the only one that survived, because that's when I got my place broken into. They stole everything and killed most of my moms, and the only thing is they left the kind of like the bottom node there. So I was like, oh, well, I can re-veg this one. Everything else got like pulled out, pulled, and then one got cut. And so then I re-vegged that, and I gave it to Tony from Sagarmatha, and I gave it to Simon from Serious Seeds, because we all worked at Sensi together. And we didn't have I didn't have a seed company. None of us had seed companies at that time. We were just growing in our apartments. And so then he started Serious Seeds, and then just because of the fact that, in Holland, it was a little bit, there definitely wasn't the idea of trademarks, and there wasn't even, people were a little more piratey in that sense. And he pretty much, even though because I wasn't selling seeds at that time, and he was like, I sold a very small amount of bubblegum seeds because in the beginning I was really pissed off that my place got broken into. I made a couple batches, sold those, and then I didn't make any for a long time.
But you had a true bubblegum male then.
Well, in the beginning, that was the thing. In the very beginning, I was only doing the selection of the females. I had just put down, I had 135 seeds, and put down about 40 of them, and out of those 40, selected those 7, and then wasn't even thinking about breeding them at that time. So it was just like my first thing. I was bringing them to the shop and saying, here, check this out, you know. So I was in the very, 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 very first stages, and so everything came from that number 3. So then Simon took it and crossed it with a sativa male, and then I took it and crossed it with an Afghan male. So mine was more the indica version, and his was more the sativa version. And so my problem is that over the years, it got super confusing as far as like, you know, what would be, you know, like I'd be like, is this from mine or is this from Simon's? And there's been some, like the guys from Germany, they have a magazine, they did a really good test and grew them side by side, and it was like the perfect, because you know Germans, they wrote down every single thing they did. They didn't miss a beat, and on top of that, they were kind of like you know, writing down every little detail, and it actually just really was a good like side by side test where you're like, yeah, look, boom, you know, ours is more indica, his is more sativa, his was more fruity, ours was more, you know, hashy. So kind of felt it was a good way to kind of determine, but at the same time, once it gets out there, it's just a name, you know what I mean? It's like it's bubblegum. So it's like, and then you got Bazooka Joe, and you got all these other bullshit things, and so I'm always kind of like half sad because I know I'll never know how, which one it really is. So it's kind of like bittersweet sort of thing, because it's like it's a very famous strain, yes, and I know I was the one who put it out there in the world, but at the same time, it kind of got hijacked right out of the gate. You know, it was like.
Well, I know that the bubble gum that I used was very short, and you know, it sounds like it was from your stock because it was, you know, it was very short, you know, kind of stocky, and
but then
it was short, you know.
One of those things where it's.
And that was supposed to be the one from Indiana.
See, that's the other part of the story, which gets hijacked.
So I don't know, like if they found a selection from your seeds.
Oh, they'll never say that. That's the thing. Nobody from Indiana will say that. Everybody will be like, no way. Here's the funny part of the story. So Victor is who I got the bubblegum from, right? So you know that obviously. Right. So Vic brought seeds from Rhode Island that he would. He'd buy weed off this guy who was from Illinois, right? But I thought he said Indiana, right? So this is years and years ago. I put out that it came from Indiana because I thought that's what it did, because Victor had already left. So I was like, so I put the word out Indiana. So then, now there's Indiana bubblegum that they're 100% like adamant that it's not from TH Seeds, though it's it's ours, the original. So I'm like, okay, well, that's funny, because if I'd said what it really came from, which was Illinois, which is really close, it's not like they're that far off each other, you know what I mean? They're in the same region, let's say, but it really came from a guy from Illinois, then that would have been on the map like that. So I don't know if, it's one of those weird ones where I don't know if it's because of what I said, and then they kind of created the myth around that. But in general, you know, I knew when we put it out that it wasn't like I'm the only guy in the world who's ever thought of the word bubblegum around weed. You know what I mean? I thought, this is just and what happened was the guys from Indiana came that were friends with Rob Clark and basically told me, oh yeah, we've been doing it for years. And so I was like, cool, I guess I really is, you know. So I just thought I'd, figured out there was. But at the same time, then later, 20 years later, Vic's like, it's just the same thing as with AJ. It was like, what do you mean it's not that? Like, he goes, oh no, it's from Illinois. I'm like, what? Oh man, you said Indiana so long ago. So I don't know. So that's one of those weird, mysteries, the great mysteries of the cannabis universe. And there's, it's pretty hard to get anybody to agree on anything. I've seen plenty of people online say that I had nothing to do with it or whatever, and I'm just like, okay, that's cool. Whatever you want to say.
Once you start getting that far back, it's kind of hard, because back then things weren't really, there was no names. You just got a bag of weed, and maybe it did have a name or something.
I was lucky enough to be at the beginning of that whole well, I don't know if I'm lucky or not, but it was just kind of like when I moved to Amsterdam, it was like, oh, okay. And to get to name weed, cool names. So I was already like, this is such a cool job, sitting around trying to think about names of weed all day. Like, so, when I was working at Sensi, and I didn't like any of the names that they had most of the time, I was always kind of a little bit like, and so I was, and in the beginning it was all themed because we were doing CIA, right? So we were CIA,
right. So
it had to be, this way we had MK Ultra, and we had all these strains that were like, okay, makes sense, right? And then, but for the most part, the name game kind of got ridiculous after a while too, and now I think everybody's figured out that it's more important to list the lineage and then make a name that makes, because what happens is I think people, they get so like hung up on the names, they want to make crosses based on names and not based on anything else, and you're like, that's not the way to do your work. You should actually base it on like the plant itself, and the names are cool, and if you happen to have one that just makes sense, then it's funny and it actually adds to the whole thing. But I think the goal is to find stuff that works together.
Well, it was always regional, like if you got weed, from Thai, you had Thai weed, Afghani, or, even the old time Hawaiian, it was always about where the weed came from. So when you got the seeds from it and you started growing them, I mean, naturally you would name them from where they came from, and then you would have at least an idea on what to look for the characteristics.
It was interesting because in like the late 80s, when kind of first times I ever like put seeds in the ground, like around 85, I guess 84, 85, and I remember like handwriting like Afghan, but not knowing how to spell Afghan, and being all like, how do you spell Afghan? Like, I don't even know how I spelled it completely wrong, I'm sure, but it was like, now I wish I had those seeds more than anything, because at least I know that when they had nothing to do with Amsterdam at that point in time, it was all out of the weed that my mom and her friends had pretty much saved, or film canisters with little notes in them and stuff. And I was like, I had Thai, and I had Hawaiian, and I had Afghan. It was like the perfect starting points, and stuff that, and I tried to grow them all in the wrong size things, and fucked them all up, but
when
it was
you're first starting to grow, unfortunately, those things happen, and you don't know what you really have in those film canisters. The value of that, at that time, you know what I mean. There was no concept.
I saw an art store down at First Friday, and it was like they just sell art supplies, and they had a little thing, and it was just filled with film canisters, and I was like, wow. I was like, I should just buy all of these right here, man. This is like, you'll never get these again. And it was like about maybe 40 of them there.
That's something that's extinct now, because there's no more film to buy.
I mean, I'm sure that there must be just fucking heaps of them somewhere, but for the most part, those things were like the most obvious stoner thing ever. Crazy part about them, though, they had a lot of chemicals in them, so we were probably exposing them to all sorts of nasty. Because if you think about film, but if it's really crazy too, isn't STS is for film stuff, so maybe there's some STS residue in there, and that's why boom, I keep getting all females. It's crazy, dude. I don't know what the hell's going on. But yeah, it's kind of interesting, because that's where that shit is used pretty much second thing on the list, You have any old stuff like that, really old stock still, or?
No, a lot of the stuff that I did see from the 80s and stuff got taken by the police, unfortunately. And even back then, I don't know why I even started collecting seeds. I was like, oh, maybe I'll grow one day, you know what I mean? And even if I did have those seeds, a lot of them were just, a bunch of seeds just thrown into a bag.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
I got a lot like that still.
There might have been something really good in there, I'm sure, but just going through all of that would have just been would have taken so much time and everything. Yeah. But I do still wish I had them. There's things I'm sure I had that we just don't have today.
Oh, I know. I have the same word. Sometimes I'll have like a bag will open up and it's like, oh no, I know it's gonna go to the bottom of the bag with all the other bags that opened up, and it's just impossible to ever clear it up.
Or if one, you got one bag that rips and there's a whole bunch at the bottom.
Oh, it's a nightmare.
It's
a nightmare. So let's do like let's do the shout outs to our sponsors, and then James is gonna call in at 20 past, I think, so it's like 13 minutes from now.
If there's anyone looking for any of our new releases, Seeds Here Now has a whole new lineup with descriptions. I know a lot of people were messaging me and bitching, and James was calling me, and he's like, dude, we need the descriptions. And I'm like, well, listen, I'm just a fucking pecker on a computer, you know what I mean? So by the time, it's going to take me hours to do that, just a simple phone call,
You have to have everybody call you. They'd be like, just have them call me when they want to buy something. Just call me and I'll tell them exactly what it's like each time. No, okay, well, let's go with right out of the gate with New Millennium, who were on the show 2 weeks ago or so, yeah. And they're going to come out with some couple new products soon, and they have a new website, I believe. It's all fresh, and they got a calculator on there so you can figure out your stuff, exactly what you need, so you don't have to waste a lot of money buying too much of this or that. But it's pretty well balanced. One of the things I love it too is, obviously depending on your water source, but with the source of water that we have, no pH required. It's just like boom, boom, done. And on top of that, it's also because of the fact that it's kind of a seasonal based thing, you control the seasons. It's like you're God, dude. But great, I've got 3 years with it now, a little over 2.5, almost 3 years now, and no turning back. I'm telling you, it's like, especially for Mom, because she loves programs. Mom needs a program. If you don't have a program, she gets real pissed off. So if you don't want to piss off Mom, make sure she's growing with New Millennium, and yourself if not. Also, they do large scale stuff for bigger production, and so if you have a facility and you're interested, give those guys a call, or you reach out to them at newmillenniumnutrients.com. And Jeremy at Build a Soil, our longest running sponsor, consistent guy, never fails, just like his crew never fails. That's the thing about these guys, is you can ask anybody who works for them what's going on, and they'll be able to answer you. It's not like, nematodes, they're in the fridge. That's what I heard lately. That was my latest at the grow shop, where overheard somebody asking somebody about nematodes, and they said, "Yeah, you mean the things in the fridge?" I was like, "That's not a good answer there." That's like, because he's like, "No, how do you use them?" And he's like, "Arr." Now these guys, any organic or IPM issue you have, work with them. They can do custom blends from one bag to thousands of bags. And they have hard to get organic nutrient lines that are consistent. The guys who won, all the guys who won our ADSI were organic growers who just happened to be getting all their stuff from him. I was like, there you go. You go to buildasoil.com, or you can go to
855-877-SOIL.
It's the only number I know, dude. You stole my glory, dude. It's the only number I know in my. I'm telling you.
You've been forgetting it the last couple of times, so that's why I jumped in.
No, I know. It was rough, but still 855-877-SOIL, right?
Yes.
Boom. Reach out to those guys for any and all your organic needs. And our buddies from Seeds Here Now, which we were going to do last, but it's okay. We'll do them now. They're going to call in about 9 minutes. It's okay. I was just going to try to linger it all around and talk about the Seedaholic site and the fact that they've got their auction.
Switch it up real quick?
Yeah, okay. We'll jump back. How's that?
All right.
Incredibles. Going to get them back on the show, too. Get some new flavs in the house. But you can go to iloveincredibles.com if you want to check out where they are. If they're close to you.
Affogatos are bomb.
Yeah, those are really good.
Yeah, especially in the morning. Those are good morning bars. Those are good morning bars. Also available in Nevada now, so they must be killing it out there. And available, I think, in California too. So I haven't tried the pistachio. Those are my next choice adult edible I need to try.
I had the monkey bar and the strawberry crunch on my way out to Vegas.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
Together, did you do like a sandwich? You make like a sandwich?
Yeah. I was just eating pieces, I guess, of it. Yeah, it was good.
Nice.
Sometimes it's hard to stop, you know.
Oh yeah, I can't save part of an edible. I don't know. I'll just go ahead and mow through it all, you know.
Yeah. But yeah, go to iloveincredibles.com, check out their store finder or store locator. You can also check out all these other new products from them, a bunch of chewies and champagnes, like those. And of course, if you want to get some super high quality pens or concentrates, you can always go to Incredible Extracts and get their black label or their in-house stuff, or get the gold label from wherever you're standing in and try their stuff. Boom, and back to the gold standard of genetics. Yes, teacher now, the best of the best. Luckily, they got guys like us. I don't know. The fact that him and I are the best of the best scares me. That scares me now. But we're all very well-vetted breeders. People who have been doing this for obviously longer than these guys have been doing it. But these guys have been doing it for the last 5 years and doing it right. Got 35 or more even breeders in-house, and all U.S.-based, and all guaranteed. If you don't like something, just you send them a reason why, and it makes sense, then you'll get new seeds. If it doesn't make sense, you're out of there, man. You're like, what are you doing?
They're on the cutting edge of breeders, the best breeders in the world, basically.
And he's working with exclusives with some of them too. So at the end of the day, it's just like, you know what, and that just shows you that they do it right, because nobody's going to give anybody an exclusive.
Well, if you go on your website, you could just whip out your credit card and order your seeds, and they'll be at your door. It's money back guarantee.
Yeah, which again, those are like things that a lot of other companies would just. You'd order one thing, they'd send you something else and say, deal with it. You know what I mean? And it's like, no. They get you what you order, and if not, they're going to communicate.
And you don't have to worry about dealing with the customs and your package disappearing or getting opened up. Everything is done right in the States there.
Sure, and they have a commercial. I thought did they send you that commercial?
No, I didn't get a commercial. They sent me like a little paragraph of something to say, but
there you go. We get on it. Start saying it. You got glasses on. I can't see. I can't read those little letters.
It doesn't make sense. But
it doesn't make sense.
I will go ahead and say it.
All right, say it anyway.
Let's see. Okay, now it's Top Dog Patrick from AK Legends and the 420 Report from Alaska and the Southside Gardens.
That's coming soon. That's what's coming.
Oh, okay.
That's got nothing to do with what. That's not a special.
That's what got sent to me. That's all.
Oh man. Okay. Well, that's fine. We're gonna get the. So yeah, he's gonna have AK Legends guy, right? Colin, is that what he's? Yeah. So, and he's actually Well, read off what he told you. Just go ahead. Read
that was it.
That was it.
That was it.
Oh, okay.
That's what he sent.
Okay. I thought there was more than that.
It's just an intro, I guess, for when he calls. So I
didn't know which is going to be any second. But he can also then tell us all the crazy specials, because they always have it's always a special. I mean, there's always some deal. If you spend, the more you spend, the more you get taken care of. And he's got literally hundreds of reviews, and they're all super on it. Everyone loves them. So that's for a reason. He's up in Alaska right now.
It froze.
Froze syndicated. Okay. So we need to get rid of live stream, I guess, soon. He's up in Alaska right now.
It froze.
Froze syndicated. Okay. So we need to get rid of live stream, I guess, soon. He's up in Alaska right now.
It froze.
Froze syndicated. Okay. So we need to get rid of live stream, I guess, soon, huh? And just kind of move on to something else. He's up in Alaska right now.
It froze.
Froze syndicated. Okay. So we need to get rid of live stream, I guess, soon. He's up in Alaska right now.
It froze.
Froze syndicated. Okay. So we need to get rid of live stream, I guess, soon, huh? And just kind of move on to